In a world where progress seems inevitable, electric vehicles have become a looming shadow over the American dream of the open road. As we stand at the crossroads of automotive history, the promise of a cleaner future is marred by the harsh realities that most Americans face when considering the switch to EVs. Let's delve into 3 critical reasons why the majority of Americans are wisely steering clear of this technological dilemma. The fear of being stranded on a desolate stretch of highway, watching helplessly as your battery indicator dwindles to zero, is more than just a passing concern. It's a paralyzing reality for potential EV buyers. Unlike the trusty gas-powered vehicles that have served us faithfully for decades, electric cars come with a built-in expiration timer that ticks away with every mile. The average EV range in the United States hovers around 250 miles, a figure that sounds impressive on paper but crumbles under real-world conditions. Factors like weather, terrain, and driving habits can significantly reduce this range, turning what should be a carefree journey into a nerve-wracking ordeal. Consider the cautionary tale of Caroline Frick, an EV enthusiast who attempted a cross-country journey in her electric vehicle. What was meant to be an adventure quickly devolved into a logistical nightmare. Frick found herself constantly battling range anxiety, meticulously planning each leg of her trip around charging stations, only to discover many were out of order or occupied upon arrival. Her experience is not unique. Across America, EV owners report spending hours of their vacations sitting in parking lots, tethered to charging stations, watching their plans evaporate along with their battery life. This crippling anxiety is turning the simple joy of driving into a complex equation of miles, watts, and prayers. The impact of range anxiety extends far beyond mere inconvenience, though. It fundamentally alters the way people approach travel and daily commutes. EV owners find themselves constantly monitoring their battery levels, calculating distances, and planning routes around charging stations rather than destinations. This mental burden transforms every trip into a potential source of stress and uncertainty. Moreover, the limitations imposed by range anxiety are not just psychological, they have real-world consequences for businesses and economies that rely on long-distance travel. Trucking companies, for instance, face significant challenges in adopting electric vehicles due to the impracticality of frequent charging stops on long hauls. This reluctance to embrace EVs in commercial sectors further reinforces the perception that electric vehicles are not yet ready for widespread adoption. The automotive industry's attempts to address range anxiety have been largely insufficient. While some high-end models boast ranges of over 300 miles, these vehicles come with price tags that put them out of reach for the average consumer. The more affordable EVs continue to struggle with limited range, leaving buyers caught between financial constraints and practical limitations. As winter approaches, the range anxiety problem becomes even more pronounced. Cold weather can significantly reduce battery performance, sometimes cutting range by up to 40%. This means that a 250-mile range vehicle might struggle to cover even 150 miles in freezing temperatures. For residents in colder climates, the seasonal variation in performance is not just an inconvenience, it's a deal-breaker that makes EVs an impractical choice for year-round use. The EV charging infrastructure in the United States is, to put it mildly, a mess. While gas stations dot every corner of our nation, reliable EV charging stations remain as elusive as an oasis in the desert. As of 2023, there were approximately 160,000 public charging stations across the country. This number may seem substantial, but it pales in comparison to the 145,000 gas stations serving over 289 million registered vehicles. The scarcity of charging stations is just the tip of the iceberg. When drivers do manage to locate a charger, they're often met with a host of new problems. Incompatibility issues plague the charging network, with different EVs requiring different types of chargers. This lack of standardization means that even when a charging station is found, it may not be compatible with your particular vehicle model. Charging times present another significant hurdle. While filling up a gas tank takes mere minutes, charging an EV can be an hours-long affair. Even with the fastest available chargers, drivers are looking at 30 minutes to an hour for a substantial charge. For those relying on slower chargers, the wait can stretch to several hours. This time investment is not just an inconvenience, it's a fundamental shift in how we approach travel and time management. Reliability issues further compound the charging problem. Reports of malfunctioning chargers are alarmingly common, leaving drivers stranded or scrambling for alternatives. Unlike gas stations, which have attendants on hand to address issues, many EV charging stations are unattended, leaving users to fend for themselves when problems arise. The payment process for EV charging adds another layer of complexity to an already frustrating experience. Unlike the straightforward process of paying at the pump, EV charging often requires multiple apps, accounts, and payment methods. This fragmented system creates confusion and frustration, especially for those traveling outside their usual charging networks. Home charging, often touted as a convenient solution, comes with its own set of challenges. Many Americans live in apartments or homes without access to private charging stations. For those who can install home chargers, the cost can be prohibitive, ranging from $500 to $2,000 for installation alone. Additionally, older homes may require electrical system upgrades to support EV charging, adding thousands more to the overall cost. The charging infrastructure problem is particularly acute in rural areas, where charging stations are few and far between. This disparity creates a significant barrier to EV adoption in these regions, effectively limiting electric vehicles to urban and suburban environments. For a country as vast and diverse as the United States, this urban-rural divide in EV infrastructure is a major obstacle to widespread adoption. Even in urban areas where charging stations are more common, the increased demand often leads to long wait times. As more EVs hit the roads, the existing infrastructure is struggling to keep pace. This results in scenarios where drivers must wait in line for a charging spot, adding yet another layer of inconvenience to the EV ownership experience. The unreliability of the charging network has given rise to a phenomenon known as charge rage, where frustrated EV owners engage in conflicts over access to charging stations. These incidents, while rare, highlight the stress and tension that the current charging infrastructure creates among EV users. This charging debacle is not just an inconvenience, it's a fundamental flaw that's crippling the entire EV movement. The promise of a seamless transition to electric vehicles is being short-circuited by the reality of an inadequate and unreliable charging network. Until these issues are comprehensively addressed, the dream of widespread EV adoption will remain just that, a dream. Perhaps the most egregious aspect of the EV push is the astronomical cost associated with these vehicles. EVs are being marketed as the future of transportation, but for most Americans, they remain an unattainable luxury item. The average price of a new electric vehicle in 2023 was around $58,000, nearly $10,000 more than the average price of a new gas-powered car. This price disparity is not a small hurdle, it's a towering wall that keeps EVs out of reach for the average American family. The high cost of EVs is driven by several factors, including expensive battery technology, limited production scales, and the inclusion of cutting-edge features that drive up the price. Proponents of EVs often argue that the higher upfront costs are offset by long-term savings on fuel and maintenance. However, this argument falls apart under scrutiny. The elephant in the room for EV owners is the eventual need for battery replacement. With costs ranging from $5,000 to $15,000, this expense can wipe out any fuel savings accumulated over years of ownership. The uncertainty surrounding battery longevity adds another layer of financial risk to EV ownership. As more EVs hit the road, the demand for electricity is skyrocketing. This surge is leading to higher electricity rates, eroding the supposed cost advantages of electric charging over gasoline. In some regions, the cost of charging an EV during peak hours can approach or even exceed the cost of fueling a gas-powered vehicle. This trend is likely to continue as the grid struggles to keep up with increased demand from EVs. Insurance premiums present another hidden cost of EV ownership. Due to the high cost of repairs and replacement parts, insurance premiums for EVs are often significantly higher than those for comparable gas-powered vehicles. The specialized nature of EV components and the limited number of mechanics qualified to work on them contribute to these inflated insurance costs. Depreciation is another financial pitfall for EV owners. Electric vehicles tend to depreciate faster than their gas-powered counterparts, largely due to the rapid advancement of battery technology and concerns about long-term battery life. This accelerated depreciation means that EV owners lose more value on their vehicles over time, further undermining the argument for long-term cost savings. The financial burden of EV ownership extends beyond the vehicle itself. Many EV buyers find themselves needing to upgrade their home electrical systems to accommodate charging stations, adding thousands of dollars to the already steep price tag. For those living in apartments or homes without private parking, the cost and complexity of setting up a charging solution can be prohibitive. Government subsidies and tax incentives, often touted as a solution to the high cost of EVs, are a double-edged sword. While they may reduce the upfront cost for some buyers, these incentives are ultimately funded by taxpayers, many of whom cannot afford EVs themselves. This creates a situation where middle and lower-income families are effectively subsidizing luxury purchases for wealthier individuals. The high cost of EVs also has broader economic implications. As automakers shift their focus and resources towards electric vehicles, the production of more affordable gas-powered cars may decline. This could lead to a scenario where new car ownership becomes increasingly out of reach for average Americans, forcing many to rely on older, less efficient vehicles. The EV industry, backed by generous government subsidies, is essentially asking middle-class Americans to foot the bill for a technological transition that primarily benefits the wealthy. This price gouging is turning the dream of eco-friendly transportation into an economic nightmare for countless families. The road ahead for EV adoption in America is fraught with challenges. Range anxiety, charging chaos, and prohibitive costs are not mere speed bumps. They are formidable barriers keeping millions of potential buyers firmly in the driver's seats of their trusted gas-powered vehicles. Until these fundamental issues are addressed, the electric vehicle revolution will remain stalled, a promise unfulfilled for the majority of American consumers.